From the stars, chaos descends.
It's time to introduce a little chaos. So to start off, we have a very cool illustration of Unicron. If I remember correctly, the artwork for this series was all done by, is it Dreamwave? Who Hasbro had deals with at the time, including for comic books, which you can see this one came with, and we actually still have that. Then we have a photo of the toy itself in its planet mode, including its Minicon, which we will see that as well. On this side, callouts for all the different action features it can do. This toy was quite complicated for its time and could do quite a few things. Then we have the box goes horizontal, I suppose, to give retailers another way of displaying this if they so choose. And you can see one of the major features of this was the ability to place many Minicons onto its rings and various ports that it had. Very nice photograph of Unicron. And illustration and logo for the Unicron Battles subline. The top of the box, which is very dusty. Honestly, Rodimus, what are you doing? Though it contains all the same illustrations that we saw before. And that is that. This isn't what you're looking for, though, is it? Let's bring out the main attraction as it was. Ah, what a sight to behold. Yes, I do think I like this one. Here is Armada Unicron in his planet form. You'll have to forgive me, as I have to have the camera quite far back in order to encompass all his greatness in frame. Though I suppose the back of his planet mode is not so great. But they were learning when they made this. Interesting thing about Armada was that it was as if they sort of reset their knowledge on how to make Transformers at the time. Anyway, this is the Unicron that was released in Transformers Armada back in the early 2000s. And it was the first retail release of an actual Unicron toy. They had made a prototype back in the Generation 1 days that has only been seen at a few conventions. It was never actually released or produced. There were actually two, if I remember correctly. Then during the Japanese Beast Wars Neo line, they had produced a prototype of a Unicron, and it never went into production, and I don't think that particular mold has ever been seen since, though I believe some third-party companies have been attempting to make their own version of it. So it was quite exciting back in the day when this decided to grace our shelves. He's not exactly Generation 1, but he wasn't supposed to be exactly Generation 1. He was the Armada version. I suppose to start off, we will take a look at his Minicon. Dead End, if I remember correctly. A simple little planet thing with a giant cannon that comes out of it. Very interesting. And transforming it is quite simple. You just pull it open for the legs, flip around the feet. You can rotate that around. Extend the arms out, bring the shoulders up. And then position things however you want, and there you have it. Very impressive for a toy of its age. Articulation, as with most Minicons, was actually very impressive. Ball joints at the hips with a little bit of restriction. Hinge knees, actual foot rotation, and ankle tilt, somewhat. Shoulder, some semblance of an elbow, but does it really count as that, is the question. And I don't think the head does anything. But yes, an impressive little Minicon. We'll set him aside for now. Features in this form for Unicron include his massive jaws, which as you squeeze, you close up these parts. Minicon ports along his rings. And some Minicon ports here that activate his missile launchers, which we will not be firing them off because, as any good reviewer knows, you fire a missile off, it disappears forever. And then it comes into my realm, and then I have to deal with that. And I don't want to deal with that, so we're not dealing with that. Moving on. I suppose it should also be noted that the base he's on right now is not part of the figure and is actually heart-shaped. I am aware of the irony of that. Rodimus 13 has been using that as a display base form because it works fairly well, I suppose. Though it does mean that he's always tilted upwards like this. The outside of the figure has translucent purple plastic for most of it, and then your usual Unicron orangey yellow. He's more egg-shaped than sphere-shaped. A drawback of the design that they do later rectify when they create Primus for Transformers Cybertron, though we will not be looking at him today. I think that's enough of the planet form. Let's go ahead and try to transform this one. You'll have to bear with me, as this figure is so large, some of this will not be in frame. So we're going to start by taking out and undoing the rings, at least up here. And we're going to go ahead and separate these. And we'll just get rid of the base for now as well. Set it down like that. Open the legs. So now we have the rings dealt with. And then from here, transformation is actually relatively simple. Legs fold down. Ah, those lovely heavy ratchets for the hips. You can fold the feet out. Rotate these panels, if you can see that. I can't see the camera right now. Let's go ahead and get him on his feet. I'm going to move the camera up. Open his arms out. Close those up and bring them back down. His fists are contained inside here. and here. Next, it's a matter of arranging his wings. Which are always a bit fiddly. Oh, and we raise up his shoulders. Really? And the final step is the head. Let me finish refining things here a bit, and then we'll come back to look at robot mode. As you can see, he stands quite tall. He was one of the first Supreme class, I think it was, figures that was made, with, I suppose, that Supreme Cheetor from Beast Machines being the first. You don't see very many like this nowadays, though you have the Titans class, which is usually a once-a-year number. But he's so big that he doesn't really fit well on my set, so we'll have to work around this. We're going to hand mode now. The head has a very impressive sculpt with lots of painted details, including even a bit of a silver wash applied to the horns on it, the same sort of thing that you see on the jaws from the planet mode. And I don't think he has batteries now. Oh, he does. But you push the button on his head and his eyes light up. Very impressive. You know what, while we're like this, let's take a close look at all the sculpted detail on this toy, as well as the impressive number of paint apps. Again, they don't make them like this anymore. Budget constraints have kept the size of Transformers down, as well as the number of paint apps. Though we're slowly getting back up with paint applications, or at least they're finding creative ways to use what they can. The wings are a disappointing feature on this. They never really could stand out quite impressively, and they're supposed to peg into the back of the shoulders. But to do that, you would either have to occupy the exact same space as the jaws, or have them folded up like this, which looks incredibly dumb. And I wouldn't allow it. Lots of clear plastic as well, which I suppose is something to be wary of. Clear plastic does have a bad tendency to break over time. Another feature it had was light up hand. Just one hand could light up a little bit. It's hard to see in this light, but there is a LED of some sort, and when you push on it, it flashes a few times. To be honest, I don't care for it too much because it makes the figure that should be symmetrical not, because this hand is now clear instead of a solid plastic like that. Another interesting feature he has is there is a firing missile within his chest that causes it to pop open and it fires out. This is achieved by placing a Minicon on the port in his back, using the standard Minicon port system that they implemented in Transformers Armada. But I'm not going to be doing that because, like I said, I don't want the missile to fly off, disappear, and end up in my realm. Alright? Now let's take a look at articulation. As always, we will start at the head. There isn't too much here, but his head can rotate around, which is somewhat surprising considering the electronics in it. Also, due to transformation, he can actually look up, though it breaks the sculpt. You can also see the electrical contacts used for his eyes. His shoulders have a nice clicky ratchet, though the wings will interfere with that. As well as this. There you go. The armor up here is made out of a soft rubbery material, so it can bend a little bit. Elbows, single jointed. Can't quite get a, well, no, I suppose you can consider that a 90-degree bend. And wrists can rotate around. And you can even get a little bit of extra articulation if you want, if you break the sculpt with the transformation joint. The fingers are where this thing gets interesting. They are almost fully articulated, with joints at the base of the knuckles, then a joint in the middle. And each finger can move independently of itself, which means you could do obscene gestures if you wanted to. I don't. The thumb can even move around. This also means that if you want, you can have him holding his Minicon like that. For the time, that was actually quite impressive. His legs have ratcheted joints at the hips and knees, though over time, the joints at the knees have gotten very weak, at least on my copy, which is why I've been having trouble with it standing. You can even make it go outward somewhat, but because of the way the ratchets are, you are somewhat limited. The detents are fairly large. You have a certain level of ankle tilt to a certain degree, as well as foot articulation. But you want to be careful with that, because if you really want him standing in his robot mode, you effectively can only have him in one way. We're going back to handheld mode to show off his various Minicon ports, because for a Transformers Armada figure, that is important. He has some on his shoulder, which can rotate around. Why, I'm not entirely certain. I suppose it is to accommodate different forms of Minicons. On his back, he has the one to activate his chest gimmick. He has one on each of his legs, and then various ports on his wings. You can also store a Minicon or two inside his chest cavity if you wish. I think his legs can even open up as well, but I tried doing that earlier and was unsuccessful. So overall, I'd say this is a fine toy, and potentially a good alternative to that rather expensive kick-started Unicron. The things to be aware of, though, is that it is an older toy. You can find newer versions of it, including ones with remolded heads and different color schemes. But the limitations that are on this one will exist in those as well. But I suppose if I had to give it a recommendation, I would. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all those fine YouTube manipulations. And don't forget...
Oh, Rodimus, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you seem to have forgotten something crucial. I have already won. This is my body now, and I doubt there's anything you can do to change that. Just get used to it. All of this is my shell space now.